I should be making a video. I think the camera light comes on, so should be a giveaway. Okay, so that should help, right? I wonder if that works. Let's see if it goes off when I pause. Oh, that'll be interesting. No, it doesn't go off when I pause, so that's not very helpful after all. Alright, comments and just more of the same, really. People are just so damn annoying. So, you know, Matthew Hargus, just a liar. I mean, putting words I never said into my mouth. Like I said, uh, nothing about quantum mechanics has been proven or something. When I'm the one saying that, yes, there is probability and there's a mechanical cause. And what they haven't proven is that there's not a mechanical cause, that it is this wooey stuff, like there are multiverses, or that there are wave functions, or that any of that stuff, or there's a Huygens. What I'm saying is none of that's been proven. And it hasn't been, asshole. And you're just being an asshole to claim otherwise. So again, you're just a deluded fanatic advocate, who can't admit the truth, which is, yeah, you really don't have evidence to say you know for sure what it is. You can declare it. You don't have nearly enough evidence for that. You're just such a fucking asshole. Alright, so I don't know what link this one is. What one is it? Yeah, I think I have this one open. ABS. I have something over here. What the hell is this one? See, this is, I posted some other link. Well, let's see what this one is first. Oh, I know what this one is. This is yeah. So he posted a link, okay, on a paper written for the Astronomy Society, and it says absolutely nothing. No experiment was done. It's basically saying the original Eddington experiment, measured in 1910, was the most famous and important experiments in all of physics, becoming the iconic proof of Einstein's general relativity. Number one, it doesn't prove general relativity. It's an experiment that just demonstrates one thing, whether or not photons are bent by light. And clearly a completely crappy experiment. Alright, and so since then, precision tests of various predictions of GR have been big-time forefront physics. For example, the recent discovery of gravitational waves with LIGO. So here they are citing experiments, again, that haven't been in any way replicated or duplicated or cross-referenced, like there's some other proof, there's some other reason to believe this crap is true. It's just a declaration by a guy who makes a movie about gravity that makes absolutely no sense, that breaks every one of the fundamental laws of gravity. He doesn't even know up from down. He's so damn stupid. And so it's citing that. So anyway, they're talking about how they really should do the experiment. So this was written before the eclipse, and they were talking about how, gee, somebody ought to do this experiment. There's no follow-up. Nobody did it. Oh, we have such better technology. We can do this and we can do that. Nothing. Nothing done. So, and the guy, this asshole, tells me this is the best he can do. So, here's this comment. It is just difficult to access data. No, there is no data. There's no difficulty to access the data. No one did the experiment. Except one guy that I knew of, right, who he did it with star charts. He didn't use controlled references, and he used a camera that had like 10 stars in the field compared to Eddington's 1,000, and Eddington hoped to get 10,000. So I mean obviously photographic plates is the way to do this experiment if you want to do it right. I mean, people are just so full of shit. This is the best that I can do as of right now, and you did nothing. You showed me an abstract published before the eclipse stating that we should do the experiment. No indication they did it. Clearly, I think they did it and they found, oh, we can't confirm the results, so we just might as well shut up. I mean, you people are just such fucking idiots. So yeah, I'm going to delete this nonsense. A reference to a non-existent experiment. A paper written explaining how we should do an experiment. He's referencing a paper that says we should do an experiment. Fuck. As an argument. Somehow that's an argument against my position that it's totally unproven. Somehow he proved it by demonstrating absolutely nothing. Showing no data, no information, nothing. We want to do the experiment. There, that's this. Wanting to do it is the same as doing it. No, I'm afraid not. The two slitics and blowing sand experiment have absolutely no correlation. Well, to say they have no correlation is probably just exaggerating, but whatever. I don't need to read that one. What about Barnett and Einstein-de Haas effect? So, another obscure experiment. It's not even an experiment. Technically, there's not much to it. It's a vial of iron filings, and you're trying to measure the. I don't even know what they're trying to measure because it's so hard to measure it. The force effects of changing the field having some sort of effect on what they suppose to be some sort of spin notion, but the fact that iron filings move when you move the magnetic field is hardly some sort of miraculous prediction. So again, I don't know exactly what you want me to say. You say that their explanation is the only possible explanation for a tiny subtle movement in an iron filing, and I'm going to argue no. We already know from like the ferrocell and other things that they line up, they probably do vibrate in their position. We know Brownian motion exists, so why is this even an issue? You're going to measure the rotation of its magnetic moment versus the rotation caused by Brownian motion. I don't think that's even possible. So yeah, okay, what about it? I say, well, demonstrate first that it has some meaning somewhere. Show me how this could affect anything, and show me how it makes their explanation of magnetism any more lame or any better. They have no explanation. Virtual photon. So they're allowed to say virtual photon, and then you're worried about some sort of obscure little tiny effect when they can't even explain how a magnet works. Amazing. Alright, Bob the Fly. No one did the experiment on his 98th birthday, but since all it involved were detailed pictures taken before and after the eclipse, well, it's not that simple, and we knew the position of the stars. If anyone thought to block out the light from the sun in any of the pictures, you could still check. Well, the whole point is that the eclipse blocks out the sun, so I don't even know what you mean by that. I really don't. And the problem is you can't just block out the sun, because the problem is the atmosphere. The sun, the light coming at crappy angles fucks up in the atmosphere and ends up being blurring out all. You can't see. There's no blackness next to the sun when you're looking at a daylight sky. That's the problem. So you can't just block out the sun with your hand because the atmosphere is still in the way. So you have to block out the sun before it gets to the atmosphere if you're going to be able to see the stars in the background. So, whatever. Hi Gary, hope you're doing well. Well, how can I do well? I'm living on a planet of complete fucking imbeciles. The BBC is literally a branch of the government establishment, and it's simply a propaganda machine, which is very well illustrated by this clip. That doesn't really explain anything. Obviously pop culture controls things. So the average person wants to force people who don't have kids to pay for their kids. They want to force people who don't make a lot of garbage to pay more for their garbage so they can subsidize them making more garbage. And the people who use a lot of water want to make the people who use a little bit of water pay more for their water. I mean, everybody's just a fucking slimy, stinking crook who just wants somebody else to pay for their mistakes. Everybody's just a piece of scum. Not that I'm not for socialism in but most cases, but obviously I think there should be rewards and punishments. People should be incentivized to do the right thing, use less water, and they should be decentivized from using too much water. And we do exactly the opposite. We punish the low-use users and reward the squanderers. Go ahead. Go bankrupt, because we'll pay for it. I mean, that's bullshit. Alright, so this is an old Robert Ritchie one, I guess before he quit on physics, but I might as well read it because it's Ken Wheeler crap. Ken Wheeler claims his magnets have a vortex above each magnetic pole. Indeed, they do. So what the fuck is somebody supposed to say? Again, you can just say, indeed they do, based on what evidence? Now, the only evidence I've ever seen is when they put electricity across a magnet, all right, in a electroconductive fluid. So you're basically doing electrolysis. Is that the right word? Electrolysis, something like that. So you're creating a bunch of hydrogen and oxygen bubbles, and the bubbles rise up along the ions, right? The bubbles are ions, and of course they stick to the magnet, and so they cling to the side, the newly created little bubbles, and then they vortex coming off the top of the magnet. Well, they only do that because they're going across the top of the north side of the magnet, so of course they're being stuck to the magnet, so they go across the magnet and vortex coming up. So they cross each other, and that's why it starts to swirl. So there's no swirl being caused by the magnet. It's merely being caused by the buoyancy of the bubbles and the bubbles being clinging to the surface. So it's perfectly explainable, has nothing to do with the magnet at all. And, beyond the fact that you're changing the path of the ionic bubbles. Jesus. Perfectly rational explanation. Doesn't have anything to do with magnets vortexing. There's no magnetic vortex as soon as you take the water out of the tank. Oh, God, you people are just so stupid. Indeed, they do. His explanation, however, is totally reverse of how nature works. I don't think you have a clue, but whatever. These vortex structures are similar to tornadoes. Well, they're really not. And as you know, tornadoes are a heat engine where the ground-based heat, high pressure, flows to the colder upper atmosphere, low pressure. The magnetic vortices are created by energy emanating from the magnetic poles. It's just not. So again, it's just nonsense. Frankly, Maxwell's equations are pretty explicit on the subject, and they work. And they don't have any vortex in them, okay, asshole? They have straight line force. Comes out of the magnet, and there's more force here than there is here than there is here. All right, and it's all about getting the R thing right, whether it's an R squared deterioration or an R cubed off the sides, and that's all you're really talking about, is that the monopoles are R squared, the dipoles are R cubed, and that's really the only distinction. But it's all straight line force. There's no vortices in Maxwell's equations. And yes, it is a momentum induction from the local magnetic field to the vortices. Just gibberish words. There's just absolutely no evidence that any of that crap exists. It can't be detected. You could drop electrons in it all day long, and you can't make one of them vortex. It's just crap. The magnet contains the energy within the atoms that make the magnet. It's just more nothing, vacuous rhetoric. I could just say the unicorn poos the magic dust, and it vortexes. The energy does not come from some mystical force outside the magnet. Well, yeah, it does. It doesn't come from inside the magnet, asshole, because the magnet doesn't get any lighter, and the magnet doesn't run out of energy. So what do you think? The magnet just makes energy. It creates it. Oh, okay. Wrong answer, dumbass. Fuck. Some magnets have very short lifespan. Prove that. Prove it. Unless you whack it or heat it, it's not going to have a short lifespan. So that's just bullshit. And that should be enough simple proof to debunk his theory. Oh, God, you're a retard. I won't bother. This Colin Munns guy just makes a lot of snarky comments. Doesn't really say anything directly much, so I'm not too impressed with his banter. Look at this crap. He's 6 comments to himself. Hi Gary, could you index your waltzing figure analogy of time dilation, please? No, whatever that even means. I don't know what indexing it means. Water, water everywhere. The wave wasn't rising, the sea is sinking. Question mark. Whatever that even means. Rip the skin off you. Spaghettification conserves information. So just see, he's being sarcastic here, I think, but the fact is he's doing it so poorly that somebody would say, well, that's probably right. Spaghettification probably does fix the problem because the information all flies off of the object, so it is conserved. And so, yeah, you could be time dilated and spaghettified, but only theoretically, and you could be just perfectly fine because you're in zero gravity. And they'll come up with some rationalization. So yeah, this is just fail. Alright, so there's this Matthew Hargis guy again. Let's go to one of his other links he left earlier and then I guess deleted it. Let's check the spam folder, see what we got in there. I mean, just an asshole. Alright. Fucking desperate kooks. QM hasn't been proven right. What does that mean? It really just hasn't been proven wrong. Again, the point is that there's a ton of evidence, and the argument is the evidence for wave theory strong or weak? Is the evidence for dark matter strong or weak? Is the evidence that there's a multiverse strong or weak? The point is, it's insanely weak evidence. You can't draw a conclusion from this silly weak evidence. We clearly, on the wave question, we have conflicting evidence. The single slit kind of just debunks the double slit realistically. In terms of comparing it to water waves and an interference pattern, it just makes it just idiotic when you start saying, well, one photon splits in two, goes through two slits. In the other experiment, well, one photon splits in two and goes through one slit. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's just rubbish. Alright, have been proven wrong, and any theory that replaces it has to account for it. Well, again, and what happened I accounted for? So this is the bullshit. Oh, there's things that cause the simplest pattern in the universe, on and off. And oh, we can't account for it. That's too wacky. Oh, that's insane. How could something create an on-off pattern? I mean, I've kind of just pointed out that all the damn thing's really doing is taking copies of the image and diffracting them to different locations. That you know, you can see it in a prism splitting light. You can see lots of places where you don't need any magical theories. The rainbow doesn't have any quantum mechanics in it technically. It just has angles of reflection. There's nothing magical in the creation of the rainbow. I mean, you people are just so full of shit. Modern computers are a result of quantum mechanics. Just a complete lie. I grew up, okay, when the transistor and integrated circuit were invented, essentially. Okay, I mean, you know, their heyday, and I have to still have the books. You know, maybe I should get pull the books out. You know, there's no mention of quantum mechanics when they're talking about, you know, how you can dope the silicon and how you can make the crystal. You know, vary how much voltage goes through. And this was something they already knew back in the crystal radio days. There was no quantum mechanics when they were putting the little cat's whisker against the crystal. You didn't need any quantum mechanical theory to understand what was going on. You're just so full of shit. And so is positron emission tomography. So we've already been over this. There's no evidence that there's positrons anywhere, asshole. That's just what they call it because that's what they think is happening. But it's just more radioactive imagery, okay? They send in a radioactive isotope. They assume that a certain thing is happening inside the body, that positrons are doing this, that, or the other thing. And then they're basically receiving back, you know, gamma ray radiation. They're not receiving back positrons, idiot. They don't have a positron detector to see the images. So again, it's just bullshit. Oh, you people are so pathetic. Alright, there is a practical side to science, whatever that even means. It's not all theory. What does that even mean? Again, the practical side, anything practical that science has created, they didn't do it because some asshole was thinking of quantum mechanically. Alright? That didn't invent anything. Some asshole saying, well, what will happen, do you think, if we heat it? What about if we dip it in dog dew? That's what invents things. Somebody taking the shit and playing with it. Asshole. God. Alright, we didn't just stumble upon GPS. So again, he's using GPS as an example when it proves my goddamn point. We're the ones going too fucking fast, idiot. GPS points out pretty overtly that even though that satellite looks like it's going much faster than us, 20,000 miles an hour, that obviously we're the ones accelerating in the thicker gravity, which means we're the ones doing the longer basketball trip. I mean, I've already explained this. You haven't made a counter argument to my perfectly rational explanation for what causes the fucking higher velocity. You're just a fucking douchebag. I mean, I've only said it like, what, 20, 30 times. You're not making a counter argument to anything I've said. I'm not disputing the fucking phenomenon that there's a relationship between velocity and breaking clocks, you jackass. Shit, you're such a cunt. And now, need an explanation as to how it works. Yeah, now I've already given you the explanation 17 fucking times. I can't watch your videos, really listen to them in the background anymore. Well, fuck off then, because your constant bitching pisses me off. Your constant irrelevancy pisses me off. You don't make a rational counter argument to a single fucking thing I've said, and you clearly haven't explained, well, why were those little round dots in that two-slit experiment? Why were the bars round? Huh? Why are they sometimes square and rectangular and very precise, and why are other times they're round blobs? Why don't you explain that? Why don't you explain what the second pattern is, fuckhead? And then why don't you explain to me how a half-silvered piece of mirror creates two equal beams when one of the beams is going through a diffraction gradient, essentially? Why don't you answer some of my questions for a change, you little fucking weasel? Alright. You're a decent philosopher, but you're a horrible physicist. You're an asshole, and I'm gonna fucking make you eat those words, you stupid, dumb, ignorant prick. Well, cunt. You couldn't argue in a courtroom because the slightest criticism of your retarded ideas would cause you to go berserk. Yeah, you couldn't argue either because you have no evidence. You'd go in there with, well, look at this paper that suggested we do an experiment that we never did. Isn't that proof that it works because they didn't do the experiment? Fuck. Yeah, you think you'd win, idiot? No, you'd lose. Criticism of your retarded would cause you to go berserk, and they would probably have to restrain you. Oh, so more bizarre speculation. So anybody who gets it all disgusted and revolted by pig stupid ignorance, oh yeah, that means they're a homicidal murderer and they're going to go all berserk. No, they're going to say the truth. You people are dumb, belligerently fucking dumb. You're religious kooks. You're goddamn little pussy soap opera watching, Jedi wishing losers who have no life, and so all you can do is imagine a fancier universe than your dull, stupid existence. You're dependent on it. You can't stand reality. Oh, God. You need to look up and read an article in Psychology Today titled The Narcissist Dilemma. So again, you can't argue the argument, you can't argue the evidence, you have to argue the messenger because you're so fucking limp-dicked, fucking inverted penis, lame, weak. You're such a coward. Anonymous puke coward. GLU, fuck you. But you and I both know that no sane person is going to agree with your theory, and it's not because of any conspiracy. No, they're not going to agree with it because, yes, you're all religious kooks. You don't give a fuck about the truth. You don't give a fuck about the evidence. Again, you don't even have the integrity to admit the Eddington experiment isn't a very convincing experiment. And the fact that it's never been successfully repeated is a pretty substantial indication that the whole thing might be based on bad theory, and that photons aren't actually bent twice as much as every other particle in the universe by gravity. Maybe that's just not true. And you don't have enough integrity to admit it. You're such a liar, a propagandist, a cheater of the argument. Oh, and he's using Dunning-Kruger, and as if I couldn't just point those fingers right at you. Oh, amazing. Take your medication, retard. Go ahead and block me. Of course I will. That's right, you rude piece of stinking shit. You weak argument-making, lying sack of crap. Okay, if you can't be civil, then there is no point in trying to interact with you. So again, that's your pussy argument. Oh, I can't make videos. I can't make a counter argument because the other person says duty words. How come it doesn't stop me? Why are you so afraid? See, I can respond to any video on the internet, whether they're a religious kook, or they're wearing dresses, or they have their hair in ponytail. It doesn't matter what they do. I can still make a response video. It's really easy to do, and I can point out how, well, that's unproven. Well, you just made that up. That's just a fucking fable. I can do that so fucking easy. Now, why can't you do it? Why can't you play my actual quotable statements? Why don't you explain how a half-silvered mirror makes a great beam splitter? Where, yeah, the two beams are equal, of course. Why don't you explain how that works? Why don't you show me a diagram of how the photon goes through the interferometer? Oh, that's right, because you can't. Because you have no clue how it works. None. Zero clues. Why don't you show me, why don't you draw me the virtual photon creating attraction, and then show me a diagram of the virtual photon causing repulsion? Why don't you do that? Oh, that's right, because you can't. Because you have no theory. All you have is your fanaticism. Ugh. Pathetic piece of shit. Ugh. Alright, so let's go to his other putrid puke links. You know, alright, so the one that's kind of another funny one, right? So this one's just hilarious, right? So that's not what I want. Well, I actually do want it eventually, because I'll show you that it's the fucking thing he's pointing to is something that's been in my my bookmarks for like forever. Where is it? It's got to be back this way. No. Where the hell did it go? No. Nope. Oh, Jesus. It was right here at the end. It should have been right here. No, that's not it. Ah, here we go. Alright, so this was hilarious. So he posted a link to a 1963 paper. And the funny thing is this paper, there's a video of the whole process. So they made a nice video explaining their whole detection process. So it's a 1961, I think, is when the video came out, which is kind of funny. The video is younger than the paper. But it says right in here, you know, it says the theory of relativity is that moving clocks run slow, and this is all about speed of the muons. So this whole thing is about the speed. Well, they call them whatever pi mesons, but they're muons. But anyway, and the whole thing is about the fact that they're going fast, and that's exactly my argument, that the speed is what causes the dilation, okay? And the speed is based on acceleration, or it doesn't matter which form the velocity is in, whether it's in the form of acceleration or it's in the form of velocity. It doesn't matter. It's the velocity that's causing the dilation. Exactly my point. That's what breaks the clock. That's what, you know. Well, frankly, the acceleration is worse, because the acceleration is when you feel the change. But obviously, if you have velocity, you had to get it through acceleration. Nothing has, no matter in the universe got velocity by doing nothing. They all had to get the velocity. That is, they had to be accelerated by something. They had to go through the process of acceleration, which is an incredibly, you can feel it. Yeah. But anyway, it's all in here. Clock dilation. That's all these guys are arguing. They're not arguing for anything like there's a special time dimension or any of that crap. They're basically just saying clocks break. So they're making my point for me. All right, like I said. But the irony is this video is on YouTube. All right, and I've probably watched it more than anybody else, because it's really a great video. But the trick to it is, I already played the video in one of my videos, and I pointed out, see that big pile of bricks? Okay, there's a big pile of bricks there. So when you're on top of the mountain, the pile of bricks is 4 feet high. They're hunks of steel, or lead. They're lead bricks, okay? So, and then when they go to sea level, they cut those bricks in, like, they take a quarter of them off, or half of them off. And that's just by their approximation of how dense the atmosphere is between the top of the mountain and sea level. And if they did that calculation wrong, if they don't know how much lead, okay, equals to how many feet of atmosphere, if somehow that calculation is a little bit off, this whole experiment kind of goes south. So, as much as I completely agree with their results and say yes, that's exactly what I would predict also, it's not a very good experiment because there's a key factor that is sort of fudgeable, and that is how many how many inches of lead equals how many feet of atmosphere, and they sort of had to make that one up. So anyway, I'll show you. So the video is actually in my bookmarks, and it's down low here. Yeah, it's not at the top, so it's been in here quite a while. Let's see, nuclear scale. Oh, now I won't be able to find it. Yeah, it should be here. Come on. Detection of light. Fred, no. Okay, it must be up here higher. Okay. Come on, I'm just looking for the Meson word. It should be in here somewhere. Pole magnetic field. Double slit. John King. No, that's the other guy. Oh shit, I'm sorry. I saw it just a minute ago. That's why I said, oh yeah, it's in there. Oh, come on. I guess I could just find it based on its title. How could I lose it? Oh, there it is. Okay. Time dilation, an experiment with mu mesons, 1960. So there it is. It's in my favorites. This is not a big surprise. You're not Shanghaiing me with something that I haven't already dealt with. You little petty piece of shit. So here's exactly a video doing exactly what was in the paper. So all the diagrams were created in this video. It's the same oscilloscope images that are in the paper. The counting of the muons, counting the photons that are created by their by their degrade. And again, the only glitch in the experiment, as far as I was concerned, that was a little bit dicey, was the fact that they basically had to make up this idea of how many lead bricks is 1,700 feet in elevation. And I just don't know where the fuck they could just make up that number from. But anyway. So fuck you, you petty piece of shit. Ugh. I hate this planet of liars and scum. Ugh, disgusting. Alright, so let's see what this piece of crap is. But this is how they argue. Instead of answering my questions, they just post an endless ream of archaic crap. So, yeah. So here's another bullshit publication about some kind of bullshit. Let's see, measure of relativistic. Oh, it's the same one. Okay, so this is the one I just showed you. So, yeah, nothing. Alright, completely consistent with everything I'm arguing. There's no proof of a time dimension here. There's just proof of an association between velocity and the breaking of clocks. That's it, asshole. That's all the people doing the experiment are demonstrating, and that's all the experiment demonstrates. Shithead. Oh, so he found
7 microseconds.
Oh, but he puts in the time code? Well, maybe that was a mistake. Oh, yeah, maybe, I guess I would just put the time code in. So again, I've probably watched the video more times than you have, because I think it's a great video. I've watched it like 6 times, just to make sure I could get some of these details right. And it demonstrates nothing counter to anything I've said at all. It doesn't disprove anything I've said at all, you stupid shit. Oh, I mean, you're so fucking dumb. So he posts a lame article about how we should do an experiment as evidence of absolutely nothing, and then he posts a link to a video I've seen probably maybe more than anybody else, except for the guys who made it. They probably watched it more than I did. But I've watched it at least 5 times. People, just hate them. Just goddamn hate people. Alright, so let's do some more half a day and then we'll get the fuck out of here.
It's useful to an extent, but you have to get the technical paper. And assumptions were, and how they argue that the criticism you might point out might be factored in the paper. Yeah, and the thing is it seems apparent to me is that when they publish papers.
All right, so again, they're just ignoring the subjects altogether, right? Because it's not about publishing a paper. There's not going to be anything in the LIGO paper about how the beam splitter works. They're not going to explain how the light turns into probability waves, if that's what you're saying it is, right? You're saying now that they believe it's probability waves that are going through the two tunnels. There's nothing in the paper about whether single photons split in two and go through the machine, or whether it's different photons that go through the different pathways. There's none of that in the paper. There's no explanation for any of this crap. So why are you pretending that somehow papers have all this information about the crap they thought of ahead of time? Again, Feynman never went anywhere near the word Huygens. Okay? So the very effect that everybody else says is causing the thing, the Huygens mechanism, I never heard him say the word Huygens, I don't think. So maybe somebody can find that reference where, maybe in the Feynman lecture papers, because those are a little more detailed, maybe he mentions Huygens somewhere. But I don't think he bought it. And clearly when he was asserting that, photons are clumps, they're not waves, and he was pointing out how the photo detector isn't going to work with waves, so waves is kind of a wrong-headed. But then you're left with the problem that he doesn't have an explanation. He just says, it's the way it is. If you don't like it, tough. Yeah, it's magical. Tough. I mean, that is lame as hell. But I mean, this holiday telling everybody that, no, that's not real. Feynman wasn't real physics. No. Susskind, his best friend. That's real physics. What a pile of crap. They all are clueless. Clueless.
They don't. No, and this is a misportrayal of science. You get the idea that they're totally open to give you the experimental setups to verify their results, and I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, right. So isn't it an irony, though, that I've shown this old experiment about measuring the mass of the electron, and then the muon experiment, lots of details. They show all of their equipment. They show how they do the experiment. No shenanigans. Nice right-in-your-face kind of stuff. Now, maybe they make some wrong assumptions in some of the experiments because they don't understand exactly what's happening either. Maybe they say some things that are fucktarded. But the truth is, it's right there to be seen. How come all these modern experiments now that we've had cheap video cameras for 40 years and somehow we don't get any of that quality science anymore? Nothing. Yeah, it's all hidden. Where's the actual data? We just get told, well, here's a simulation of what we saw. Yeah, right. Sure it is.
It seems entirely too hard to get the technical details. They write a paper which holds together, they announce the results, and that's it. They wait for somebody else to confirm the results or reject the results, but they just stand by it. And the other guy who wants to confirm the results, they leave them to find their own get over their.
No, it's even more sinister than that, right? The Alan Aspect bullshit. He does an experiment with his secret technology, his spinning mirror, and he doesn't let anybody else use his secret technology. So they can't repeat the experiment because they don't have his secret technology. That should be thrown out the window on its face as rubbish. That should get you shot as a scientist. That kind of bullshit.
Their own experimental difficulties and do their own work, it seems. I mean, I just watched a video the other day, I don't know the extent of the truth, but what's the dissident science guy saying that CERN are not handing over the data, so you can't even check whether they've really, verified the Higgs.
Well, again, how would you know anyway, right? I mean, the whole presumption about some sort of blip in an energy diagram over, what a billion different little protons did and what the average blip was and how the hell that even means anything, like, okay, that proves it was a frickin' Higgs boson. I mean, it would take you months just to figure out why they think this is a particle in a field.
Higgs existence.
It's just a blip of energy, really. It's just energy. All they're measuring is an energy blip, and they're giving it a name. I mean, it's just that stupid.
It's kind of, I can see one argument for it. Like, if China want to develop their own theories and confirm the standard model for themselves, arguably it's a good thing for science if they rework it out for.
Why would it be good for science? I mean, again, that's like saying it would have been good for science if Rutherford kept all of his data secret and everybody kept all their data secret, and that would have been good for science. No, that would have been catastrophically bad for science.
For themselves independently and say, yes, we also confirm the existence of the Higgs. It's not necessary.
Again, how are they going to confirm it? They don't have any other way to access it except through this stupid accelerator. So yeah, let's do the same stupid experiment and have the same stupid naming policy where we see a blip in a chart and we call it something. I mean, the logical connection between that blip and their theory of a 100 dimensional fields interconnected, that somehow this stupid Higgs field is, because they don't have any, again, because they're using non-existent energy for gravity and virtual energy for magnetism. That's why they have to have a Higgs field, because they have to somehow figure out where the energy comes from.
Necessarily pernicious and surreptitious withholding of the information, but it's a
oh, bullshit, it isn't.
It has a negative side, whether it's motivated by such negative.
This isn't even the big subject, right? I mean, obviously, as I've pointed out, they claim they saw gravitational waves with an instrument they never proved can even detect gravity, period. I mean, they never tested it for its capacity to detect movements of mass. They never took a Volkswagen and swung it over the mirror to see if the mirror could detect the mass of the Volkswagen. I mean, it's a completely unproven technology.
Purposes is impossible to say without evidence of conspiracy or something, you know. So that's it. So light is not an existent, tangible wave. It's a probability wave, just like everything to do with.
Some more bullshit. I mean, so whatever. Again, there's no standard quantum mechanic definition. So he's just saying, oh, I'm going to now say that all physicists don't even think it's a wave. So now it's bad enough they don't think it has mass, it doesn't have momentum, it's not a particle, it's a wave, and now it's not even a wave. Now it's just probability. So I don't think most physicists want to go that far down the retard hole.
With quantum mechanics, wavy-like nature is probability-based, pure probability, which can be rejected.
Again, it can, yes, and it's just stupid because again, without the wave, there's no interference pattern. There's no explanation for the pattern. So how can you disconnect the pattern from the probability? I mean, clearly the pattern has to be explained through a mechanism.
On an ontological basis, straight off as an explanation. It's just a useful theory.
So again, useful. In no way whatsoever is any of this crap useful. So that's just a lie that this has any use. And clearly the formula has to be manipulated for every circumstance. So it's not like they have some skeleton key that opens all doors. Oh, I used the same key to open every door. That's not what quantum mechanics is doing. Every single circumstance, you can't use the same formula to do reflections off layers of glass as you're using to do two slits, and you can't use the same formula to do a single slit because you're completely changing what variables. The A variable is no longer the same variable. You're changing what the variables are. Clearly the math doesn't work. Clearly it's not a skeleton key of any kind. If you have to file new pieces on it, it's not a skeleton key.
Secondly, I've made this point time and time again about, it's not worth the endless polemic on quantum.
So again, it's not worth the endless polemic. Yeah, that is worth it because it's exactly what you're fighting. You're fighting their religion, okay? You've got to break them of their fantasy that they somehow have evidence for what they believe in, that somehow it's like the theory of evolution and it's well proven and well documented. You have to point out to them, no, there is no DNA, there is no chromosomes, there are no anything. This is just all made up mush. It's hugely inconsistent mush. It doesn't make any sense. Photons, the smallest, fastest thing in the universe, as far as we know, are twice as affected by gravity. You know, when every expectation would be that the smallest, lightest, fastest thing would be the least affected by gravity. No, it's twice as affected. I mean, the logical incontinuity is right there in your face. And this asshole is saying, oh yeah, no, it's all kind of quite reasonable what they're doing.
Science and the educators of it, because so many of the top guys wash their hands of that kind of thing.
It's just bullshit. They don't. So again, he's just saying it. All the top guys do that. Well, what top guy? Sean Carroll? Which one? Michio Kaku? Degrassi Tyson? You know, who are these top guys you're talking about? Oh, your favorites. I mean, it's just totally subjective.
I remind you, and I'll attach it to the videos, my recent video, and I have it independent. You know, Leonard Susskind.
Okay, I'll remind you, Richard Feynman. It's clumps. It's clumps. I'll remind you, Richard Feynman. It's clumps.
Saying, you know, he can fake it. He can give you the.
I can fake it. I can tell you a lot of stuff about quantum mechanics and give you all sorts of mystical experiences about entanglement and when you walk out of here, you'll know more about entanglement than you know when you walk in.
So what does that say? That says he can fake it. He can give you the mystical.
No, he's saying that entanglement is a bullshit subject, and let's not even go with that. Let's talk about something more realistic. Yeah, maybe that's what he was saying. Fuck you.
Experiences, blah blah blah. That's whistleblowing on, you know, saying that. Hey, that's what those guys are doing. That's all wrong. You know.
And again, what he's doing is just as bullshit. He's pretending that there's this, you know, these singularities, and any of this crap is anything other than loopholes in their math. It's just mathematical errors that they have these infinities in their math. And instead of just admitting it, he sits there and pretends, well, let's simulate it as, you know, water in between two pieces of glass, and as much water goes out as this comes in, and yeah, all right, yeah, I'm explaining something as, you know, as what its real effects are, and its real effects look awful mechanical, don't they? Yeah, they don't look very quantum or random or probabilistic. No, it looks pretty frickin' mechanical when you're forced to make it mathematically make sense.
You're not really able to say when you've been exposed to that.
Looks exactly like mock gravity. I mean, really, I should play his lecture because it's just basically, I mean, if it wasn't so long and boring, because he's basically just diagramming mock gravity.
Faking that, giving you the mystical experiences, etc. That's the take-home point. Murray Gell-Mann, a video I've.
Yeah, again, yeah, you keep reciting the same little corners of physics, okay? Well, guess what? That's not all of physics. If you think Murray Gell-Mann is the king of physics, well, I think you're a bit deluded.
Loaded independently and recently. Will straighten your head about the interpretations of quantum mechanics.
Talks about many worlds and many worlds.
Yeah, right. That's not all of quantum mechanics. So again, many worlds is obviously nonsense, and obviously the whole entanglement thing is stuck on this, you know, right and left hand glove bullshit, that somehow they've eliminated the possibility that there's some variable involved. When how do you eliminate the possibility of an unknown variable? I mean, it's just ludicrous.
Equally real, which has confused a lot of people, including some very scholarly students in quantum mechanics. To me, equally real doesn't really have any useful meaning. What the people mean is that there are many histories of the many alternative histories of the universe, many alternative, coarse-grained, decoherent histories of the universe, and the theory treats them all on equal footing, except for their probability. Now, if that's what you mean by equally real, okay, that's all of me.
Well, whatever. The whole thing is bullshit. We know there's not different histories, so everything does. The mathematics works great going backwards. You don't need any quantum mechanics. Don't need any woo or bullshit, because you can see that it's all precise angles that things had to move. So, yeah, this is just such crap. Alright, well, there's enough of this video. It's just a piece of shit. Oh, God, I hate this planet. Alright, well, we already did this, too, so hell with that. Oh, God. Damn. I hate you people. This is the cathode ray tube guy again. You know, again, just manipulate the experiment a little bit. Just change how you do the experiment, and you can make it look like something different than you know is the truth is happening. So anyway, well, you know, Hofstadter never addresses a damn thing I say, or, you know, the points I raise. So again, he just doesn't deal with the fact that it's weak evidence, that there's contradictions, and the huge contradictions, especially the lensing thing, huge contradictions. That the evidence mine all over the place, right? I mean, the beam splitter's just a magical beam splitter. We'll just ignore the fact that it's got a bunch of small diffraction slits in it, and we'll just pretend a game like somehow it's not a diffraction gradient when clearly that's what it is. You know, and then we'll focus on the two-slit experiment, and we'll try to make the one-slit experiment, oh, that's just plain diffraction. It just makes little lumps. It doesn't do anything interesting. No. We'll just make that one go away. I mean, clear evidence mining, okay? Then the preposterous exaggerations. I mean, they take a little tiny shred, a fleck of evidence, right? All I have to do is produce a cat hair, and they'll make it into a Sasquatch. Every single time. Tiny problem, right? Okay, they have this infrared background problem, you know, with the redshift. And then I got a little bit of problem about the acceleration, the velocity of the stuff in galaxies. And what do they have to do? What do they do? Did they do something rational, like say, well, maybe we ought to examine our presumptions or assumptions? Maybe galaxies aren't contracting, they're expanding. So of course the things on the outside would be going too fast because they're actually leaving the galaxy. Duh. You know, they're not very hard. No, instead they invent dark matter. Just invent some fake matter that can't be detected, that just does magical things, you know. And it also, as a nice little happy accident, it also explains lensing images in preposterously ludicrous positions. In places where there's no possibility there could be lensing, now there can be lensing because we have fake gravity. We can just spread anywhere we want to. I mean, what are you going to do? That somehow doesn't diminish their credibility. Of course it does. All right, and then you got the credibility of every time they tell you what the evidence is in terms of what evidence was performed or what experiments were performed, they always exaggerate the outcomes of the experiments. They always exaggerate the perfectness of them, how it couldn't possibly be an error, how they couldn't have possibly made a wrong assumption, when the experiments are fundamentally got a ton of assumptions built into them, any one of which could be wrong. And then their history, how they never tell the history accurately. And he's just sitting here basically just saying, you know, you're doing dissidency wrong, and then somehow they're doing authority right. You know, instead of dumping the criticism on this terrible science based on horribly weak evidence with grandiose and boldly asserted, you know, statements where they assert something's been proven when it hasn't even been close to being proven. You know, it's just like some religious person saying, our very existence is proof of God's love. I mean, it's that bad. All right, and then so yeah, this whole just is argument that at least he points out is just kind of bullshit. You know, just is probability versus, oh yeah, we know there's a cause and an effect. So they're denying cause and effect, breaking cause and effect. That's what's really getting thrown out here. So even though we have a zillion experiments we can do to demonstrate conservation of energy, conservation of effect, cause and effect is strongly evidenced. And yet these assholes are jumping to conclusions that just break that fundamental concept. All right, and then he says top guys. It's just what he says. Says you. Bullshit. So this is some other dopey link the other asshole left I haven't gotten to yet. He deleted the comment, so, you know. But I don't know what kind of, I'll get to that some other time. But yeah, nobody has any obligation to back up any of this crap. They don't ever answer any of my fucking questions. No, it's just such a fucking conversation between people with integrity and fucking compulsive liars. That's all it is. They're just compulsive, fanatic liars, religious kooks. That's all they are. Lie, lie, lie. Distort, pervert, exaggerate. Never make an honest argument. Never present an honest piece of evidence. You know, just bullshit. Alright, so there was something else I wanted to say or do, but I do not believe I remember what it is. So, it'll have to wait till the next fun time. So yeah, anyway, like I said, I have covered so many subjects in the last few videos, and they're subjects I haven't even had a chance to write anything down. I mean, I just thought of this stuff. I mean, I never knew, okay? I mean, it's just a fact, okay? I mean, I spent my whole life, you know, when you have the bicycle wheel on a stick, I never really understood why does it do that? Why does it make you spin if you're on a chair with a, you know, a hinge and it's just going to spin around because the wheel is turning? And I never thought of the simple explanation is that clearly the wheel's being pushed down by gravity. The gravity is hitting the top of the bearing, okay? And the friction is doing exactly what it should be doing. It's saying the wheel's going this way, so this thing's going to go that way. And it's just putting the force that way, just like a space shuttle. It's just balancing the force. There's flame going this way, the wheel moving, and it's basically just saying, well, the shuttle's going to go this way. The axle's going to turn this way. So the tip of the axle is gaining acceleration and moving, and it's such a huge amount of acceleration that it's putting torque. You can feel the torque on your hand. You can feel it pushing. You can pick up a hard drive and do the same thing. You can feel the torque. And all of that torque is going through the bearings of the discs. So even though those bearings are really smooth and beautiful, they do have more friction on one surface than the other surface, and the force is actually literally going from the momentum of the disc is being converted into momentum of the axle. And that axle then transfers through the whole case of the frickin' hard drive, and the whole case moves. And it tries to move your hand. And that's the reality of it. It all depends on just what part of the bearing has more friction. That answers the question. Yeah, so I haven't written this shit up yet. But I mean, it's clearly oh, bang, that's the answer. It's just obvious that that's the answer. That's all that's really happening. The force, the actual force, the little bits, the little fish, the little energy is actually being converted through the friction. It's moving like electricity. It moves right into the axle, and now the axle has acceleration. Shit. Simple, mechanical, no woo required. Anyway, okay, hit the button, Gary. I have to hit buttons on a little crappy keyboard, actually, so it's a little dangerous.